Howdy ho, everyone. How's it going? Well, over the last couple of years, I've noticed a change in the barometric pressure, a change in the wind patterns. Barometric pressure, hold up my finger. Pretty absurd, really. That's how this whole situation is absurd. Something I've wanted to talk about a little bit, but I'm not sure how far I can go into it, is how amazing it is to me that over the last year, our skepticism about the pharmaceutical industry has turned into praise for these amazing new technologies that are coming out. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, Pfizer and Moderna are, these not only, active makers of medicine, but active participants in sponsoring the media. And it's a really interesting time to be alive, to watch how Americans, during a time of fear, will completely forget what they've learned and forget skepticism, forget any type of critical thinking, and just say, I'm going to trust the experts on this one. And I'm not going to go into what you think I'm going to go into here because, of course, YouTube will delete my video. They will censor me, and I'm not allowed to talk about that. But you know where I'm coming from. In the U.S., the drug companies basically have free reign to do whatever they choose. And in most other Western countries, they are reined in. I mean, there are regulations and laws as to how much you can charge, whether or not you can completely stiff the elderly in your society, which is something that's happening here. And that's what I want to talk about today. We talk about pharmaceuticals as far as giving it to kids or to adults, but the biggest travesty comes from the elderly. Those over 65 are given so many drugs in this country. And it's worse than you might think. And so I can sit here and ramble about it, but instead I'm going to put on these really cheesy glasses I found at a garage sale, yard pile of garbage in a garage sale for free, because I can't find my super fancy ones. And I'm going to read some of the statistics I got off of the Science-y websites. And this is, for what it's worth, these are the numbers as to how the elderly are getting completely rear-ended over this. Americans spend more on the top 20 most prescribed medications than the rest of the world combined. Now, let me repeat that. America spends more on the top 20 drugs than the rest of the world combined. Now, you may say, well, that's because we have more access. This is not true, and I'll get to that at the end. It is not about access. Many of these drugs are available to anyone who can pay for it, and many other countries pay a lot less than we do. But we are about 5% of the world's population, and we consume a majority of the drugs, including opiates. And this is why this is near and dear to me. Seniors in the U.S. have the highest rate among 11 high-income countries of not taking prescription drugs because of cost. And these countries, in case you're curious, are Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the UK. We have more seniors that are unable or unwilling to take their own drugs because they're afraid of paying for it in this country. And that's kind of similar to how we treat the troops. Anyhow, another note. This financial burden is felt even more acutely by the estimated 2 of 3 older Americans living with at least 2 chronic conditions. Furthermore, more older Americans have suffered from economic hardship during COVID pandemic compared with their counterparts in other countries. Damn it, I just said those words. Whatever. It's a joke. It'll demonetize it anyway. Doesn't matter. Not that I put ads on here anyway. That's why I rely on my patrons, so thank you to my patrons. Okay. Compared with other counterparts in their other countries, 1 of 10 in the U.S. is reported feeling stressed about having enough money to pay for basic needs like food and rent. The number of Americans taking multiple medications has grown rapidly over the last 2 decades. And this is important. Open your brain here, turn on your memory thinker here. Between 2000 and 2012, The proportion of adults in the U.S. who were taking 5 or more medications nearly doubled from 8.2% to 15%. 10 years, okay? Or 12 years. That is, you cannot say that all these amazing new drugs were invented. They were repurposed, and all of that's for a completely different story here. But it says today 42% of adults, 42%, 2 in 5, over the age of 65, take 5 or more medications, a red flag for harm. The rapid increase in the number of medications older people are taking has led to a sharp rise in serious side effects, known clinically as adverse drug events. We estimate that 1 in 5 older Americans, that's 10 million people, experienced an adverse drug event in 2018. More than 250,000 people were hospitalized because of a reaction to a medication. If nothing is done, adverse drug events over the next decade can be expected to cause 4.6 million hospitalizations of older Americans, 74 million outpatient visits, and nearly 150,000 premature deaths. And, I know some people may say it's because, we have all these new drugs and the elderly population needs them and they benefit them. You might not realize that a lot of these drugs, unless you know somebody who takes them, they might be taking 1 or 2 drugs, and all the rest of the 8 other drugs are for the side effects. Oh, you've got constipation? Take this. You got nausea? Take this. Oh, you got a headache? Take this. And they continue to pile them on. It's disgusting. It says for 17 of the top 20 top selling drugs in the world in 2020, pharmaceutical companies made more in revenue from U.S. sales than they did in every other country put together, according to Public Citizen's analysis of company filings. For 11 of the top 20 drugs, U.S. sales revenue was double that from sales in the rest of the world combined, and for some drugs, the disparity was even greater. For example, Pharma firm Gilead raked in $6.1 billion from selling HIV drug Biktarvy in the U.S., 5 times more than it made in the rest of the world. And I'm just going to skip to the end. I'm not going to read all these different drugs. The U.S., it says $158 billion. That's how much revenue sales from the top 20 selling drugs brought in. And U.S. sales made up $101 billion of the $158 billion. That's nearly 2/3. And here's the key and the part I want you to take away from this. The U.S. does not buy or use more drugs than the rest of the world. Research puts consumption on par with other wealthy countries. It simply pays more for what it does use. This is in line with its spending on healthcare overall, which is far greater than in similar countries and achieves far less. And that's true. We are like number 17 in infant mortality and death rates. A key factor in the sky-high prices is down to the government's inability or refusal to negotiate lower prices. Despite bipartisan agreement on the need to lower prescription drug prices, efforts to achieve this have failed. And there's the key right there, my friends. Despite bipartisan effort to lower drug prices, bipartisan meaning both of the parties that run this country claim to have agreed to lower drug prices, and none of them have. And my question to everyone is why? Well, that's because the corporations have more power than the government. And now we have companies like Pfizer and Moderna. We have their CEOs coming out on the newscasts and saying, we think you're going to need a 4th booster now because this will protect you against this and this will protect you against this. And there are still folks out there who can't understand why some of us are skeptical. Are there really people out there who think that Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson really has their best interest at heart? That these people are only out to solve health problems in the world? If you look at the history of lawsuits and failed products with these companies, you may or may not be shocked. The highest amounts of fines in the billions of dollars from Pfizer a couple of years back. It's just gone off the charts because the more money you make, the more you can pay lawyers to and weigh the options to figure out, well, if this kills 1 million people, then that's fine. I'll just pay them off. It sounds so absurd, but it's true. Drug companies actually do an assessment on the value of human life, just like insurance companies do. How many dollars is your life worth to them? And how much would they have to pay out to your family if you got, hurt or harmed? But here's the clincher and the thing I'm going to leave you with. With all other drugs, and I'm sure you've all seen the commercials, there will be hey, were you harmed by taking this drug or this drug? Well, here's a law firm that's going to deal with this class action lawsuit against this pharmaceutical company. It happens all the time, and people do get paid, but that's not the point. The point is that all of the pharmaceutical companies involved in making these vaccines, every one of them, made deals with the governments that said, you cannot sue us for any adverse events. And when they made deals with other countries, like Brazil, they actually asked them to put up their military in some of their buildings for collateral and said, you not only can't sue us, but you can't allow our name to be ruined or have your government sued, because there's a lot of money to be made. And that brings me back full circle. Do you trust the pharmaceutical industries to tell you what you need for your health? What is an expert? What is a health professional? What is a doctor if we can't listen to every one of them? I'm going with not just my gut or my instinct or my feelings on this one. I'm going with my research on this one. I think I'm going to sit the current pandemic out. But really the bigger issue here is the elderly and the way that they're being thrown to the curb in this situation. I actually think that the elderly can finally benefit from a drug. I think that a lot of older people are at high risk for COVID, and I think that they will benefit from getting shots. But the interesting thing is, nobody seems to give a shit. Nobody seems to want to even look at the data on anything. I made a couple videos talking about kids taking amphetamines, I have a friend who took amphetamines when he was young, and I know people will say, well, it's different. It's not methamphetamine. But the fact is, if you're taking Ritalin, you're taking amphetamines. And how it can affect our brains long term, but we just don't know enough about it. But how it really can benefit a small amount of kids, but that it's overprescribed. And this is exactly what's happening right now. There are some people who will definitely benefit from getting a shot, and others who won't, and may actually have a risk. And we're unable to even discuss that now. It's a very strange time to be alive. I've said that a lot lately, but it always is, right? I, for one, want to make this clear. First of all, I'm not here to talk bad about any of the current procedures or shots. What I am here to say is that this isn't something new to me, that I bought into what somebody else said or conspiracies, but rather the fact that I spent many years studying the pharmaceutical industry and their greed. And I've mentioned this before, but I'm actually writing a book about this. It's I'm up to I think around 100 pages, or 80 pages, I guess, about all the different pharmaceuticals that have been recalled, all the lies, all the way back to the 50s, Mother's Little Helper in the 70s, and selling Valium to every mom across the world, and opiates back to the Civil War. We're no stranger to pharmaceuticals, and drugs have brought us a better life in a lot of ways. The discovery of antibiotics was an amazing breakthrough. The discovery of vaccines was an amazing breakthrough. But today, we seem to just put our trust in the fact that things have been amazing in the past without asking ourselves, are they still amazing in the future? Rather, are these drugs still what we think they are? And I would leave you with this one final thing. If the pharmaceutical industries are being honest, then why is one of the most basic drugs that's used in the world for diabetes, why is it multiplied 4 times in price for the U.S. in a couple years? There are so many people that are diabetic out there that carry around insulin And the process, the drug, is well known. It has been used for decades. Yet all of a sudden there's a price spike. It's all about price gouging and getting people to pay what they will pay. And the fact that when people say, go out and just get your shot, it's free, our tax dollars paid for all of this. And I just want you to remember that. Every single shot that goes out to an American, whether it's a booster or otherwise, is paid for out of our tax dollars. Your wallet, your paycheck. Even if you don't get one, or you do, you still pay for it out of your wallet. And that money's going to these pharmaceutical companies. They are getting paid. You're just not paying directly. You're paying through a different realm, a different method. Rant over. I kind of went from elderly to COVID, but I see a lot of people being taken advantage of, and it saddens me. Talk to you next time. Peace out.